Hi everyone, and welcome to the first of many videos in a new 3D Buzz VTM series on XNA and C#. My name is Richard Maud. On the forums you can find me floating around under the name Juxi. Feel free to PM me with any questions, comments as we go along, or even just say hi and let me know you're following along. I'd love to hear from you. Look, I'm pretty excited to be sharing this game with you and very eager to begin, so I reckon we just dive straight in and talk about what this game is, guys. So, what is this game? As soon as my pen starts working, there it goes. What is this game? I'll put a little dot there and pow. Okay, so this game is a 2D side-scrolling beat-em-up. Think of old-style games like Double Dragon, Streets of Rage, Battletoads, Golden Axe, Final Fight, or my all-time favorite, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Turtles in Time. You know you want to say it, Cowabunga! But if you've never heard of any of those games, God forbid, a more recent one would be Castle Crashers for the Xbox 360. That game is a lot of fun, and basically that's the game that inspired this entire project. So, what is a side-scrolling beat-em-up if you're not sure what any of those are? Basically, it's a game where you play as a character who walks through levels beating up your enemies. Now, I'm not a fan of senseless violence, so our game is going to have a story to play through, a reason for you to be fighting, a reason for your targets to be labelled as your enemies. So we're going to be creating ourselves a new player character. His name's going to be Tony, and his daughter's just been kidnapped by a mob, and you're on a mission to go and rescue her. But first, before we get into the story, we'll look at that a bit later. For now, let's look at the gameplay and what it is we'll be creating. And I think a good spot to start will be with Tony, our player character. So keep in mind, this is just an overview. I won't be going into much depth about the how we're going to be making everything. We'll leave that for the implementation plan. What we're going to look in this video is the what it is we're going to be making. So let's have a look-see at the start. We've got our player. Now, our player is going to have plenty of different abilities. He's going to have the ability to punch. He can combo punches and kicks together. Look at my slanty shanty writing. Nice. We can also jump. We can jump kick. I'll just put jump kick if that's okay. What else can we do? Well, he can move around, needs to be able to move around the environment. So moving up, down, left and right. We'll get into the controls in a minute. And if it's going to be a fighting game, if you can punch people and hit people, you've got to be able to take hits yourself. So he's going to be able to get hit. Where's my cursor? There it is. He's going to be able to get hit. He's got to be able to get knocked down. He's got to be able to get back up. Put this on a new line. And that's essentially all of them that we'll talk about for now. We'll go into what the rest of them are a bit later. So we've got animations created for all of these. As a 2D game, we're going to have a nice big long sprite sheet with all the different animations on there, and we can tell it which area to draw. That's implementation plan stuff. So everything's been designed to have some smooth animation with a bit of transition around the place so it doesn't look so blocky. We've got controls for this, of course. You need to have the way to do everything, and that'll go away now. Controls. This game is going to be made with an Xbox 360 controller. Now, however, I don't want to leave those people out who don't have an Xbox 360 controller, so I'm also going to be doing the code for the keyboard as well. But I'm just going to comment that out. It'll be in the project, and you can choose which way you want to go. But I'm going to be focusing on the 360 controller. They're going to be very, very similar. You see, the way we're going to be doing this is we're going to go for an old-school style game. If you think about games that were in the arcade games, like the coin-operated ones, excuse me, you've got your thumb or your joystick had up, down, left and right, and that's about all it had. Up, down, left and right. And it also had the diagonals up here. You could go in these directions, but that was just a combination of up and left or down and right. So we're going to make our 360 controls stick in those directions and only accept up, down, left, rights. So we're going to have 8 directions of movement nice and stiff around the place. But we need more than that. You may have to do all these other actions we've got over here. So the A button is going to be our jump. The X button is going to be attack. So you can keep on tapping X and you'll be able to combo. But we'll just put attack. And the B button will throw a knife, which we'll get into in just a moment. which I should have put over here because we can also throw knives. There we go. Now the other cool thing about this is we've got a jump kick where you press A to jump and then X while you're in the air. A plus, well not plus, A then X equals jump kick. Jump kick. Okay, so doing all those actions is nice and all, but it's much more fun when we've got some enemies that we can beat up. Now this game is going to have two types of enemies. I'll just make a new quickly one down here for enemies. And we'll block this bit here off a bit, just so we don't get them all confused with what they look like. And we'll scroll down. Now we're going to have two kinds of enemies in this game. We're going to have a close range fighter, and then a long range. The long range guy throws knives at us. Well, what the close range guy does is he's going to walk around and try and seek out the enemy, get close to you. When he gets close, he's going to try and punch you in the face and knock you over and try and pretty much knock you out because you're going to try and knock him out. The long range guys, what they're going to do is instead of coming close, they're going to try and get away from you. And when they're far enough away and they're lining up with you, they're going to check, is there any more enemies between me and the player? No, if I throw a knife, it's probably going to hit him. It's a good chance. Great, let's go ahead and throw that knife. But if there is someone in the road, they're going to go ahead and think, no, hang on, I shouldn't be attacking my own teammates, so they're going to go ahead and try and go to the other side of the enemy, or move somewhere else where they can get a good shot. And that's about the enemies that we'll talk about there. No, they're going to need some good AI to control all what they're doing, so we're going to have for this, we're going to have a state-driven AI system. State-driven. And if you're not sure, AI stands for Artificial Intelligence. And so the two enemies, yep, that's that covered off. So having the enemies is all good and the players is all good, but we need somewhere to actually fight in. So let's talk about the game's environments. Levels. We'll go down here. Love how my writing style changes on each one. So in the levels, this is a side-scrolling game, as I was saying before, so we're going to have background images that scroll along sideways as the player moves from the left side of the screen to the right, or the right to the left, whichever way you want to go. We're going to have multiple layers of backgrounds, and these are all going to be moving at different speeds, and this is going to give us the illusion of depth. So, multi-layered backgrounds. You can probably remember doing something like that from the Starfighter series, or the, what was it called? It was Space Fighter, and you had the star fields, and they all moved at different speeds, and that gave you a nice illusion of you were flying through space. Except we're not set in space. We're set on Earth. Layered backgrounds. My handwriting is getting smaller and smaller here. Well, we're not just going to have backgrounds though, I also want to have some foreground elements as well. So for an example, if you enter a building, then you don't just want to have the door frame, you want to see like the door in the background, all of a sudden there's nothing blocking you. What did you just walk into? Well, we're going to have a foreground element so that you can kind of walk behind other objects, and that gives a more sense of illusion of depth and helps the player feel more involved, like this is a real world. And we're just going to put background and foreground elements. And what else have we got here? Rightio, so our game isn't just going to have one level, it's going to have a multi-level. This system is going to, our game is going to be using 2 levels, but essentially you could have as many levels as you really wanted to. 2 levels, but the system can hold more. Just how many more? Well, as many as you really wanted to have in your game. This system we've got here is going to work in the exact same way, no matter how many levels you want to go putting into it. Rightio, so the enemies can play back, the enemies can fight back, we've got an environment for them to fight in, but we still want the player to have a little bit of an advantage. After all, there's going to be a few fights where there's more enemies versus the one player. I mean, there's one section I'm going to have which has 5 enemies versus the one player, so the player's going to need a little something extra to try and help them out. So we're going to try and throw in some weapons that you can use. In this case, we're just going to set up one for the player, and that's going to be the throwing knife. Scroll down a bit here. And what do we call this one? We'll call it game items. Now, I'm not going to call them weapons because, well, we'll get into that just now, I guess. First one we're going to have is a throwing knife. Throwing knife. The second one we're going to have is a health pack. So there's going to be bits where you're going to get your ass kicked and you're going to need a bit of health. And, well, it's going to be handy. The enemies don't have that. And with there being so many more of them, but only one player, we're going to need to get a bit of a health pack every once in a while. Now, the health pack that I'm going to make, it's only going to restore a little bit, more like a large chunk. But it's not going to get you from 10% back up to 100, more like 10% back up to 50, just to give you a little bit of an edge. Or a little bit of a helping hand, I should say. Health packs. Now, the throwing knives, these can drop off the ranged enemies themselves. So if you beat up a ranged enemy, they can go ahead and drop one. We'll put a bit of a chance in there. I don't really like chances, but I'm going to use it anyway because in this game it kind of works. In health packs, you can put them down on the ground wherever you want, or if you wanted to, you could make it a little bit more. We can take our inspiration from those old school games and have, let's say, like a trash can on the ground. And when you go ahead and kick the trash can, it's going to fly through the air and knock over all the enemies that it hits, taking off a little bit of their health, giving you some helpful time to go ahead and pick up the health pack that the trash can could drop, or it might even drop a throwing knife, whichever way you want it to go. It doesn't even have to drop anything if you don't want. So that's now we can beat up all the enemies, and they can beat up the player, and they've got health, but there's no real way of knowing what's going on screen or how much health we've got. So we're going to set ourselves up with a HUD manager here. We'll call this just HUD. And what the HUD's going to do is it's going to draw the player health, let us know how much we've got left, and it's going to draw the enemy health. So what they're going to look like is a full bar that's yay long. That is a horribly, horribly, horribly non-straight line. So full 0 over here, 100% over here, and let's say we're on about 50% left. This bit here will be filled in with yellow, so we know how much we've got left. Whereas this side here is going to be nice and red. I won't fill it in. Yeah, I just won't fill it in. Okay, so when you beat up an enemy and make him lose all of his health, we want him to fall over and we don't want him to get up anymore. And that makes sense because you're out of health. But what happens if the player runs out of health? Well, keeping with the old school theme of the old coin-op arcade game approach, this is going to bring up a continue screen. So we'll scroll down a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more. Yeah, that's plenty. Game over screens. Okay, so if you run out of health, it's going to tell you game over, and then it's going to ask you, do you want to continue? There's going to be a countdown timer, going from 10, then 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. And if you reach 0, then it goes, radio, game over, you failed, did not save your daughter. So we'll call that fail screen. And there'll be a nice bit of music that goes dun dun dun, or something like that. We'll find something nice. And now, if you press start and you can go ahead and continue again, then it'll just pick up straight from where you were. You'll have full health again. Everything will just pick up as if you just put a new quarter straight into the machine, and you're ready to keep going right where you left off. But what happens if you beat the 2 levels we've got? Well, then you get to the you win screen. You win. I guess you wouldn't call it a you win screen in our case, because this doesn't quite finish the story. You don't save your daughter, and, well, I guess we'll leave that for a bit later as well. We can talk about that one later. But what did they fail at when they failed? They've beaten up all these enemies for no reason? No. What you failed at is you failed to save your daughter. So remember, we've got a story to tell here. And what's one of the ways to tell a story in-game? We're going to have some cutscenes. Cutscenes. There we go. Now we can spell. Rightio, these are going to be in-game, so when you start up a level, you can have the character walk into the screen. He can go ahead and start saying something like, "They took my daughter," or whatever you wanted him to say. You can choose up whatever you want, and as I said there, it's going to have text to say. It'll show you what he's saying with some text. There'll be a picture of, so you know who's actually speaking. If there's, let's say, 5 characters on screen, you want to know which one's actually speaking, so we can put a picture of them up. We'll put a little portrait. And this can be changed if you needed him to, let's say, be happy. You could put a different picture for if he's really angry and annoyed, or if he's really sad. You can change the picture on the portrait to be whatever you want. But while they're talking, we're also going to add in some voice acting. Just for a little bit more fun. I reckon it's pretty cool. Rightio, so that's the cutscenes. But now, we need some ways to trigger off these cutscenes. We need ways to make them to happen. So we're going to create ourselves a new little trigger box. Trigger box. And what these are going to do, there's going to be different kinds of trigger boxes. We'll leave the specifics of all the different types of the implementation plan, but I'll explain some of them now. There's going to be ones that trigger cutscenes to happen, so that everyone will start talking and it'll take control away from the player and the cutscene will play with the voice acting. There's also going to be ones that take you on to the next level. And then there's going to be ones that spawn more enemies for you to fight. Spawn enemies. Okay, so how are they going to spawn? Well, let's put a new little thing here for enemy spawn. Make that more of a Y. How are they going to be spawning? Well, we can have them starting on screen if we want. So they could be sitting there stationary, like leaning up against the wall, waiting for the player to come near them before they decide to join the fight. And then they go ahead and start into the AI routine from there. They could walk in from the side. From sides. Okay, what else can they do? This is pretty cool, actually. We can have them have special entry spawners. So we'll call this, in our one, we're going to be making one which is a door spawner. What this does is, let's say there's a door in the building, the enemy's going to go ahead and open up the door and come out from the doorway. And the door will still stand there, but that's kind of cool, because what you can do with that is, let's say you didn't want to have a door spawner, I better finish off writing that. If instead of you didn't want to have a door spawner, you could have maybe a fence if you wanted to, and the enemies would climb over the fence before they started fighting, or you could have them climb up the side of a building, smash in through the windows, or jump out of a tree, or jump out of a helicopter, crash a car, and then come and attack you from there, whichever way you want it to go. It's really nice, it's a good system, it's ready to go, and you can just change the animation to be whatever you want it to be. What else do we need here? But this is all just talking about the graphical side of things. You didn't see that bottom bit there. Let's just scroll up a bit there. You didn't see anything. So this is all talking about just the visual side of things. What about the sound effects that really draw you in? Sound. There's going to be lots of different sound effects. We need sound effects for punching, for when you throw punches. What about when you hit people in the face? There's going to be different noises. There's different ones for when you knock them over and they fall on the ground. There's different ones for when you throw a knife. There's, if you kill someone, then they're going to give out a nice big scream of pain. Yes, there's going to be screams of pain, and they're going to be fun voice acting those. But not every single person sounds the same. So what we're going to do is we can record one sound, and using good old Xact, the cross-platform audio creation tool that Microsoft includes with XNA, we can go ahead and tell it to give some pitch variance and some volume variance to make them all sound just a little bit different each and every time, give it some variety. So I'll just leave sound effects as it is, and music. Games love music, or at least I like my games having music when it's appropriate, and I think this game is great to have an appropriate kind of music, particularly on the intro screen. Music keeping in with the theme of everything else. On the intro screen there's going to be one kind of music playing, then when you reach the actual playing the game there's some different music, so playing music. I'm suddenly switching to capitals on these, I'm very sorry for that, and because I'm running out of space here on the bottom, no, it's good, we're going to have some music for when you fail, so game over music. And I believe that's pretty much everything I wanted to cover here in the overview. There's plenty more detail to go into as well for all of this, but we'll leave the specifics of how that's all going to work for the implementation plan, which is up next. So I hope this overview video has gotten you pretty excited about the project, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video in the series where we get a look at the implementation plan. So that's everything for now. Thanks a lot, guys, and I'll see you there. Bye bye.